prioritizing data management for banks and FinTechs. Let's get it going. I'm going to invite in Mr. Minesh Koradia, who's the Director, Banking and Financial Services, WebEngage, to kindly please step onto the stage. He has a panel comprising of Mr. Metesh, Bhati, who's the Senior Vice President and Head Digital Innovation and API Banking for HDFC Bank. Welcome in. And Mr. Dipesh, Karki, who's the co-founder and CTO for LenDenClub, to also please step in. And you definitely all three have a unique name and sounding so familiar. I'm sure that was one topic of discussion. So you've got your names right at the back. All right, over to you. Please go ahead. All yours. Thank you.
Well, firstly, a very warm evening to all of you. Thank you for having us here. Hi, I'm Minesh, and I happen to lead the BFSI function at WebEngage. We are a MarTech omni-channel marketing automation platform. And today we are going to discuss a very, very important topic when it comes to banks and fintechs, right? It's prioritizing data management and data security, and we know how heavily this domain is regulated, right? So it's a very, very thin line that all the organizations have to walk when it comes to managing both these aspects. But before starting the discussion, let me quickly introduce the panel members to you. We have with us Mr. Metesh Bhati. He's the Senior Vice President and Head of Digital Innovation and API Banking at HDFC Bank. Of course, India's leading private sector bank, we all know that. And we have with us Mr. Dipesh Karki. He's the co-founder and CTO at LenDenClub. LenDenClub essentially is a P2P lending platform that gives an alternate investment options for investors and lenders alike. Great to have you, great to have you guys over here for this discussion. I think it's going to be very, very riveting and very, very insightful. Coming in from very, very different domains, core traditional banking domain and a new age fintech domain. But before kind of getting into the session, I just wanted to set the context, right? So when we talk about data management and security, I mean, it's a given, right? We all agree that data is a lifeline for any financial institute, any bank or any fintech. And in fact, fintechs are built upon data. But if you guys don't end up using the data in a way to achieve better performances, better conversions, it doesn't make sense, right? To kind of bring everything together, putting so much of effort and then kind of not achieving much out of the entire initiative. So data management is a prevalent challenge. We all know that. Data silo is another big challenge, which I'm sure organizations in this space are grappling with on a day-to-day basis. But I think apart from this, we also have a very, very pertinent problem when it comes to banks and fintechs right now. This industry is very, very heavily regulated, right? Regulators like RBI, SEBI, IRDA, they all have a very, very key eye and focus on ensuring that the privacy is sort of maintained, the data security is kind of not compromised, right? Would love to know from you gentlemen, how do you guys kind of manage the situation and balance this out? With that said, let me begin with my set of questions. My first question is to you, Mitesh. Mitesh, we all know that banks have an edge when it comes to data across channels, be it online, offline. But again, the edge is lost, right, if you don't use the data in the right manner. So how do you guys go about unifying the data, and how do you essentially accelerate this entire process?
So completely in agreement, right? So without data, you cannot imagine any business to run profitably in today's day and age, or maybe the time to come, right? Customers expecting personalization, let alone, right? So I feel this is little more overhyped word on customer experience, but data plays a lot more role in getting the business profitable, right? So today, as a bank, and jumping directly to what we are using data for, is fraud, risk, customer experience. Then we have more product definition and product innovation use cases around data. So the use case, it's like a soil, and it's for one to select the right seed and sow into it, right? And the fruits are definite. Coming back to your point on silos, what other than an incumbent large organization like HDFC, where each product is individually regulated, right? So the asset products are differently regulated, the liability products are differently regulated, the payments are different. So silos are bound to pertain into system, and and with the past, I guess this data thing, the unification started happening post the Aadhaar launch, right? So then we saw a way where we could point out after looking at the data or the identity, okay, this is Mitesh or this is Minesh, right? So so before that, we have examples where, there are n number of, today also we have examples in rural banking or tier 3, tier 4, where, the Geo or the Airtel or the Idea, Vodafone, they bringing out some campaign affecting our data quality, right? So they may roll out and offer 3 months free Lelo mobile, right? And suddenly the whole number of the customer changes, not linked to their Aadhaar or something like that, right? So there are challenges today also, as the whole ecosystems one has to come in. Coming back to the silos, yes, we being the innovative bank, you have seen a lot of product innovation at the right time HDFC has been doing. At the tech and the data side, we are now trying to have that golden record of the customer, right? So nothing less to say, n equal to 1, r equal to g. My ex-boss used to teach me, when you know the customer as a singular entity, the resources go global, right? So now you can pitch your customers with varied experience, very customized products, and understand him better when to pitch him what, right? And I believe WebEngage is built. So we have been discussing this concept with Avlesh also many times. Uh, but moving ahead, the whole problem of silos, the master data management or ETL of the old ages don't work anymore, right? Uh, so, so here is the use case, typical use case of cloud technologies coming into the picture. AI coming into the picture. Having a customized and a need-based, data mart over our data lake. So at HDFC, definitely first we are moving towards the cloud, right? So HDFC as a bank, as a regulated entity, we never had cloud adoption, but so that's the first step. We move to cloud.
I'm
We
sure
we
it's
are
a step in the right direction,
yeah.
absolutely.
So then then investing into data lake, over which we'll have data mart. Then we have the data knowledge base, so that we can define each variable and the use cases. And the last step is having data as a service through APIs for any systems in the bank. So, so this is the logical step that we are taking. We are somewhere in the middle right now, defining our data marts and the data knowledge bases. But nonetheless, and in the whole process, we ourselves are so amazed when we look at the quality and the way, though being regulated, we have been blamed that this is a very regulated entity, but the surprises these data shows us, right? There are same customers with 5 different mobiles, with 3 different PAN cards, and so it's a fun database to look at, because for last 20 years, I don't know what was getting in. Uh, but at the same time, while we as a bank taking these natural steps, there is innovation on account aggregator coming in. There is innovation at different data and the constant level of data sharing coming in. Eventually, an institution not cleaning the data right will eventually dump their data menace into another bank system, right? So if we heavily rely on account aggregator system and bank X never checked it and blindly passed on the data to us, we'll just okay it and push into a system. So I believe if not done rightly, this data problem will multiply in due course, and with not only the RBI entities like banks, IRDA coming in, SEBI coming in, any one institute has to just acknowledge the garbage, and which will be multiplied. So there is a lot of these precaution steps also that we are taking, right? Not allowing. So while we participate into these, innovations, we are also taking care not to allow these garbage to come in, right? So a lot of verification, validation, rejecting certain use cases if we have doubt, using our offline channels to validate more if we have doubt. So our AI, again, gives us a confidence score. If that shakes out when we compare the same entities with our internal databases or whatever knowledge we have around payment instructions, then the confidence scores go down and eventually passed on to our offline method where they have to do a one leg more of validation. Right. So these are few things, and I believe it's not just for HDFC, but I guess each organization as large as HDFC, maybe in different regulator domain, right? So whether it's investment, wealth, or anyone, right, insurance, all have to take this preemptive steps eventually to have the right footprint. Yeah. So a good time. It's a fun time to look at. Because without this, any system that we build, any digital technology that we adopt, ROI is far-fetched, right? And you cannot believe that what we are talking to the customer is right.
Oh, interesting, and I completely agree with you. Now, in today's event, I have been talking to a lot of traditional, financial organizations as well as new age fintechs, and they all are, fortunately, unfortunately, grappling and struggling with this problem and trying to find a way, out of this. My follow-up question to you, Mitesh. I'll come to you, Dipesh, quickly, shortly. But my follow-up question is to you, Mitesh, and I would want you to be slightly careful while answering this question because this is pertaining to your department in the bank. Now, when we talk about data, you interestingly mentioned about having a complete view of your customer. Now, in most of the cases, we see that the IT infrastructure in banks or financial institutes, they, they make achieving this 360-degree profile view a significant challenge, right? Now, you can attribute this to perhaps having legacy systems in place which are hard to scale, maintain, and of course the regulatory norms that you have to comply to. But how does a traditional financial services organization kind of come out of this challenge, kind of evolve out of this challenge? Are there any specific steps involved in it?
So again, I have done this, not only at HDFC right now, but in my earlier role in wealth management industry. There is no right or one way of doing this, right? But all I can say is the old methods of ETL and MDM doesn't work anymore, right? So you will have to use the cloud power, you will have to use the AI and other relevant use cases. Maybe use the public domain APIs that are available, uh, what we regularly call the data APIs, to validate and unify, right? So unless machine cleans it, machine gives us the exceptions or false positives, I guess it's regardless, whatever step or the path any company has to take, it doesn't lead to a fruitful thing, right? One of my organization, a 50-year-old legacy organization, when we transformed, the data was like absolutely nothing, mobile number with a book of like 5 crore of investments going on. So it's crazy, right? So data can be as absurd as you can imagine. So there is no right or wrong way, but a right path to it is, getting your infrastructure right, knowing what all data or data silos exist, acknowledging the level of problem you have, and eventually taking the right steps in the right direction. You cannot achieve, 100% of each step. Maybe, ease versus impact is my favorite analogy when I solve this, the larger puzzles, because you cannot solve 100% on day one, right? It's a journey you have to embark on. There is a day and age when you will say, okay, today the data is all cleansed, the data is in proper shape, and HDFC or any organization can make 100% out of it. So it's about the right steps, and following it with right level of perseverance and right use of technologies that will solve it. So as I told you in my last answer also, that there's a step to it, right? You invest in the infra, then you go for the data lake, then you define the data mart, then you have the data knowledge base, right? Define and have the red book of all the variables, right? Where how that same variable in another system is defined, right? So each data varies between the silo DBs, and eventually you use data as a service for all your systems, right? So today within HDFC we have n number of organizations running, right? Asset, liabilities, wholesale, corporate. Each one have their own usage of data. So the idea is to create APIs over this data so that we can expose and transfer the insights with the right intensity to the right platform. So we need not open the whole data lake to them, but we can derive the derived values or the insights and eventually pass on to the downstream system of that organization. So I guess eventually this is the logical step. HDFC has not taken any weird or innovative way of doing it, but I guess this should be the approach anyone should be taking.
No, no, absolutely. I think it's easier said than done. And I've seen SDFC up close and see the kind of innovation that you guys are doing on a quarter-on-quarter, year-on-year basis, which is awesome. Let me come to you, Dipesh, now. Now, when we talk about like P2P lending space, right? How does an organization in this space use the data at its disposal when it comes to mitigating the investor risk or when it comes to kind of providing high yields to lenders? What is it that you guys kind of do? I mean, how do you manage this? Is this simply done by kind of bifurcating users or segmenting them as low risk, medium risk, high risk personas, or is there something more to this?
Uh, Thanks for the question, Minesh. So, before answering that question, it is important to understand how P2P lending differs from the traditional banking system, right? Although the infrastructure or the solutions that we provide pretty much matches to what a bank or a traditional financial institution used to provide to both depositor as well as to a borrower, correct? The difference is that we operate completely online. We do not have a physical infrastructure to operate on. So that's where data becomes pretty essential, right? If you talk about onboarding a customer, to assessing a customer, to servicing a customer, to closing a deal with a customer, and to terminate or to complete an engagement, all of this happens over data, completely in a digital experience, at least at LenDenClub. So for this, right from day zero, we have always focused on building the right set of data and building right set of information out of it. Initially, when we were trying to identify how we could segregate a borrower from investor, we figured out, okay, hey, the kind of customers, I mean, income is just one parameter to it, wherein a customer could become a borrower or a lender, right? But there's much more factors like locations, situations in which a customer is dealing with a financial need, right? Sometimes even a salaried individuals with a good credit score could become a borrower, and sometimes with someone who does not, who is even new to a credit, can become an investor, right? So we're trying to change that traditional way of thinking with the use of data, right? For that, we started segregating our data into multiple segments. On the borrower side, on the investor side, we try to bring uniform experience to all our investors rather than bucketing them to a different type of risk category, the way other financial instruments are providing as on today, right? So right there, we understood that there are multiple parameters that we learned from traditional banks like HDFCs, ICICIs, and others, right? Wherein geolocations could be one of such, demographic data is definitely one of such, right? And all the traditional data points that we receive through the traditional bureaus or traditional institutions are definitely there. But we went beyond that in order to identify avenues such as, a digital footprint a customer creates in order to understand what is the likelihood of repayment by this customer, right? What is the actual need of a customer, right? We are making a guesstimate, but we can tell you this, that our guesstimates are much more accurate, right? And with time, it has matured to a greater extent. It has matured so much that as on today, the investors who are funding these loans are getting returns in double digits, right? While LenDenClub is making profit. So that's how we've been able to play with data, right from engagement, right from onboarding to engagement to servicing to closure of a engagement.
Awesome, man. Great to hear that, Dipesh. Just a quick follow-up question on this. Now, I'm sure in your space, collections is a huge, huge problem statement, and I'm sure you guys face challenges there in that area. How do you go about solving for that and utilizing data to be able to kind of ensure that the collections are happening in the way it is supposed to happen?
So, of course, data plays an important role here, but first, let me remind that we are not much different than a bank or financial institutions. We are equally regulated by RBI under an umbrella called NBFC P2P. So we have to abide by the RBI norms when it comes to collection. But with that being said, we strongly believe that prevention is better than cure. So we make sure that our underwriting is apt enough to make sure that the probability or propensity of a default from a customer is mitigated right during the assessment of the customer, right? Wherein I know that if a customer is a willful defaulter, definitely there are triggers at my system which can tell you that, okay, this is a customer that you should not service at all, right? There could be a customer who could have a propensity for default, but wherein I'm not so sure. Maybe I'll try with a small amount with that to that customer, and I'll keep my system will keep a close track to that customer and see whether there are some footprints or whether there are similar type of data in the system or not. Wherein we make use of data science, right? Our team has a lot of dedupe checks in the system, which makes sure that duplicate PAN was one of such, right? Trust me, Web 1.0 was one place wherein customers started building some digital footprint, right? With Web 2.0, we have started, aggregating this information to make sure that we reduce the redundancy of data, right? Now with Web 3.0, and I'm sure we all are experiencing, I was talking to Metesh also some times ago, right? Wherein they are also exploring to make sure that customers, trust in terms of customers AML or KYC is reduced, right? So that direction is something that we all are moving to, right? But for that, digital footprint is to be made, dedupe checks are to be done, and contributions from all of the institutions out there are to be made. So KYC, AML is one of such, AA is another, right? There are many other entities that are coming in, right? Not just NBFCs or institutions like us, but there are a lot of other RegTech and other third-party agencies that have been contributing constantly to make sure that we ultimately build a healthy ecosystem of data out there.
Right. Interesting. Now, interesting you talk about RBI, right? My next question is pertaining to RBI. Now, recently, RBI has kind of taken a call to collaborate with the banks and NBFCs, specifically on trade financing overall, to combat loan frauds and loan defaults, right? And this is a blockchain project that RBI is essentially collaborating on. What's your take on this initiative? What's your long-term take, as in how this will pan out and how this will help organizations like y'all? And Metesh, I would want you to also step in, since you are one of the parties to this initiative. Would love to know your views as well.
So I believe the initiative towards blockchain started aggressively after in the recent years, wherein there were a lot of incidents happening, fraud incidents that happened regarding letter of credits, right? Wherein the banks realized that this is high time for RBI to step into a much more secure or much more trusted technological platform. That's when they started exploring blockchain, wherein a network is built, a trusted network is built there, right? So the initiative was really commendable, wherein a lot of big banks like HDFC, ICICI, and few others have participated and already done some exercise with them, right? So I'm sure Mitesh will be able to highlight further on that. But I believe going forward, this is going to be a game changer for the overall industry. Just like we've seen the initiatives of RBI when they introduced e-rupee, right? A lot of subsidies, a lot of other ways in which the funds were being distributed to the end beneficiary has come to a much regulated place. Right? Likewise, the introduction of UPI, I'm sure it does not require an introduction. Right? Today, India is known in the global frontier because of UPI and because of the initiative by the RBI. Right? CDBC is another conversation that's happening. Right? Now, with blockchain being introduced in case of building this identity of the customer, it's not just banks and NBFCs that will be benefited, but there will be a lot of institutions and a lot of innovative startups coming in to leverage this technology and to build much more beyond on top of the existing infrastructure that the bank and NBFCs will be providing with regards to the RBI. I think Mitesh should be able to add more around this.
Metesh, what's your take?
Yeah, so completely agree. Blockchain as a technology, next 10 years is fulfilling, right? There is so many use cases. Today we are just still scratching the surface, but as a piece of technology is commendable, and there are too many use cases that can be exploited. It creates the right stepping stone for Web 3.0 or the environment that it promised to deliver, right? At the nascent stage, yes, as a bank consortium, 18 banks coming together along with RBI, we are solving the letter of credit, the trade finance use cases that we are looking at. But we do have our vision for KYC, AML, lending frauds, all these things to be solved through blockchain as a community, as a platform, or as an RBI entity coming together to reduce the burden on each other, right? That being said, we are also exploring how blockchain can be used internal to the bank, right? So if you look at bank as an hierarchy, you know, we have a lot of organization, right? To the extent, you know, they individually can be called as an organization, right? The retail arm, the asset arm, the wholesale arm, right? And individually we keep on doing KYC for each of our customers, right? So a credit card is being KYC'd separately, and asset customers is KYC'd separately. If they are some sole proprietor, they are being, you know, and these systems don't talk to each other. You know, we are also interestingly looking at, can blockchain solve these use cases, right? While logically yes, but what is the tech feasibility, or you know, what is the best way of doing it? It's still under discussion, right? And even you have encountered many organizations wants to do this, right? Who are like incumbents and group of companies, because it definitely doesn't make sense to acquire the same customer 3 to 4 times, right? It doesn't make sense. Can we have that authenticated common layer which each organization and their respective regulator can trust on, right? So these are few use cases. Yes, the blockchain still needs some more you know, development to happen, where the cost and the running cost goes down. You know, the chains are more flexible to be adopted within the organization as well. So completely in agreement. Yes, blockchain. You know, we positively think is the future. Yeah.
Great. I think 30 minutes is too less a time for us to be discussing blockchain and its implications in the industry overall. But I think given the time that we have in hand, I have one last question for both of you, right? And again, it is a very, very general question, but a very, very interesting one at the same time, right? Now we all know this industry is very, very heavily regulated. So how does one solve for a classic conflict like, you know, utilizing the data in the most creative ways, innovative ways possible to create beautiful customer insights, you know, beautiful customer experiences, vis-a-vis, of course, abiding to the norms that are set by RBI, SEBI, IRDA, etc. What's the way ahead in this industry? You know, as per both of you, how does an organization set the right balance between managing the data, using it in the most innovative ways possible, and of course, at the same time, abide to the regulation compliances? Dipesh, if you could go in
So,
first.
interesting question again. So, see, regulations are bound to be there, right? Just because there are regulations does not mean it should stop innovation, right? Innovations are bound to be there. Innovation should be there, keeping in view the regulations that are in place. So, I think the right way to go ahead would be to have a custodian of each and every type of a data out there, rather than everyone else just merely handling the data and submitting just the way they want it to be, right? Because my way of reviewing a data, or my way of submitting a data, and your way of submitting a data or interpreting a data could be different, right? So ultimately, raw data is something that a dedicated entity or a custodian can handle, right? And information or insight out of it can be definitely managed by someone else. But when it comes to you know, submitting back that data, there should be a reassessment mechanism in place, just like the way CKYC is working as on today, right? Although there is there are entities identified in order to submit CKYC report. Consumption is open to almost every financial institutions, but not everyone can submit CKYC report, right? And even banks are innovating a lot in terms of making sure that the data is rightly used, right? But today, once I use a CKYC record, it does not stay in my system just like that, right? It is stored in an encrypted format, and I can access it based on my encryption algorithm. I can, based on my decryption keys that I have in my system, but I'll not be able to float it just like that, right? So it is my duty to respect that data. It is because it's my customer's data, right? So such mechanism has to be there. There are a lot of innovations going in and around it, right? For example, even in case of AA, right, there are FIP and FIUs, right? So only a limited set of institutions are allowed to become a FIP as on today, right? For someone to become a FIP in near future also, there will be certain norms coming in. There will be certain regulatory checks that will be required, compliance checks that will be required, in order to make sure that the data is authentic, data is clean, and data is well protected, right? So I see that there will be such dedicated entities or such custodians coming in near future in order to make sure that a right set of data is provided to the right set of entities, rather than everyone having control of it.
Interesting. Mitesh, what's your take on this?
So firstly, you know, I guess in last 30 minutes you have been blaming the regulation and the regulator to the highest extent. But the kind of frauds we see at the bank, trust me, these regulators play super role in controlling and acting in the interest of the customer. And recently we have been also thrashed by the regulators for some issues at the tech side, but I guess that's what we all collectively come out for in interest of the customer, to build that trust level that they can rely on for their finances. So I won't blame the regulator ever. At the same time, understand the regulator, they being a regulator, being so nimble at the same time, uh, the agility with which they are moving and releasing the regulation, I guess, all three of us in our organization, we cannot take such calls, and that fast, right? And at the same time, I see them coming to us also, what are your learnings, what kind of fraud cases you are having, what is the opportunity, what is the business uptake happening, whole regulatory sandbox environment and the cohorts they had opened and the kind of participation were, seen there. It's tremendous, and there's something to learn from these regulators. How they can do, and we at our organization, whatever state, size, and format we are, we cannot take such calls and at that pace. So, so one has to believe into the regulation. It's there. At the same time, the whole consent architecture which has been laid out, and the account aggregator being one of, I'm a big fan, and I believe that's the next UPI moment for financial services. I guess anyone still not believing into it is living into their past. But account aggregator at the consent architecture is one of the example where regulator has taken a bold step, where they have acknowledged that the data and the customer is at the supreme power. They control their data, and nobody can stake claim over it, right? And that's the beauty, and we should commend that this will open up a huge amount of use cases, and in a, I would say, a wave of new innovation when it comes to financial services or fintech, I may say. At the same time, it's not just fintech. I guess as a bank also, we are palpable, right? When this system matures and opens up, we also want to ride the wave, right? And UPI was long lost. No banks, I would say, trusted the UPI wave. But I guess here we see PhonePe and Google Pay, playing the lead role. So AA has that potential. It is way beyond the potential in terms of almost every regulation of financial services coming together and riding on that rail. It's super secured in terms of getting the consent from the customer with with a set of profiles which the customer decides, right? So how many times, with what frequency, for how long, right? This is the beauty, and I guess it will further mature. I won't say it is in the best shape and format, but as we move forward, it will open up, and just believe the whole use cases that are coming up, right? So, and you also mentioned, fintechs. I guess today, even at a bank, we few teams call ourselves as fintech, right? If we don't innovate, it's not like tomorrow we'll lose the battle, but eventually, uh, if we don't hear the needs of the customers, we don't find the relevancy in our customers' life. I don't think how big or small you are. You one day you won't cease to exist, right? So you need to be relevant, and that's more important. Whether with the right experience, but at least you need to be relevant with the right trust the customer wants to put on you. At the same time, believing this architecture, which has been set by the regulator, we need to participate, and understand what better we can do, right? So with all these entities coming together, the data sharing becoming equalized. So what I can innovate, even Lenden can innovate, and any other fintech can innovate. It's high time we partner together. We don't fear fintechs in terms of they will take our pie, but we believe they have the right innovation, they have the right technology and talent, which we can collaborate with, right? So at HDFC, we have taken a right stand of collaborating and partnering with fintech, and you won't believe the number of fintech partnerships we do around. I guess outside, 30% of the participants are somewhere linked to HDFC, and you can see our name everywhere. So we believe in right set of partnerships. We believe in the fintech. So we believe we have the distribution and the scale to answer, and fintechs had the right technology and the right innovation to complement it. And here's the partnership. So I don't feel any fear, which you have been noting, whether it's a regulator or fintech. It's just that we are all coming together as a community, and I guess that's the platform play eventually the Web 3.0 will open up.
No, absolutely. I think the regulators are playing a pivotal role, when it comes to kind of, maneuvering this space. And of course, I think the big difference that I see in the, if you talk about, 10 years back and today, I think regulators are more open to feedback, as you said, which is a very, very critical aspect. I think they're also constantly wanting to evolve and learn out of what is happening. I think a perfect note to end the discussion on. Thank you so much, gentlemen. It was really, really insightful, and I gained quite a few new perspectives out of this discussion. Thank you so much for your time, gentlemen. Thanks so much, and thank you so much, everyone, for your kind attention. Thank you so much, guys.
Thank you very much, gentlemen. So definitely data is the fuel everybody's talking about, but regulation is the key. That was the emphasis for this particular session that you just witnessed. Once again, turn